Ken Jennings, one of Jeopardy's biggest winners, if he thinks his 74-game win streak from 2004 will ever be broken. And while current champion Scott Riccardi isn't quite knocking on that door just yet, his run on the 2025 TV schedule has drawn quite a bit of attention. Jennings discussed the current buzz surrounding one of the best game shows ever, and there's something ominous about his comment. On July 24th, Scott Riccardi won his 16th game of Jeopardy, tying him at No. 10 in the record books for consecutive games won. Enthusiasm started to build around the New Jersey engineer when he became an official super champion, a moniker bestowed two contestants with double-digit victories, and Ken Jennings spoke to TV Insider about whether he thinks his record is in Jeopardy. He said, Ken Jennings admitted to having to temper his emotions a bit as host of the game show, though he certainly can't be cheering for one contestant over the others, which he recognized. Continuing, I understand that Ken Jennings has to let the home audience know where the champion stands, what the stakes are, whether they're close to any records, etc. However, I also sometimes get the feeling when these kinds of statistics are given at the top of a game, that it's a bit like calling out a no-hitter in progress. Like the host's mere mention of a streak will jinx it. Also, is it just me, or does Ken Jennings' final thought on the matter sound a bit foreboding? He concluded, Ken Jennings sounds a bit devious here, but it is true. Death, taxes, and losing on Jeopardy are life's only certainties, as old Ben Franklin would say. Speaking of Benjamins, as of Thursday, July 24th, Scott Riccardi had accumulated a whopping $455,000. Jeopardy! Season 41 ends with the Friday, July 25th game, so we'll have to wait to see if that ironclad law is enacted in this cycle, or if Scott Riccardi is given a reprieve to continue his run into next season, when episodes will also be available for next-day streaming with either a Hulu subscription or a Peacock subscription. Check your local listings to see when the game show airs in your area. Jeopardy! Fans know that when Ken Jennings speaks, it's worth listening. As the show's most famous champion and a longtime guest host, Jennings carries a unique perspective that bridges the history of the show with its modern developments. Recently, during a televised interview and in his social media commentary, Jennings made headlines by invoking what he called the ironclad law of Jeopardy, while discussing the meteoric rise of the new super champ Scott Riccardi, a contestant whose impressive streak is turning heads and raising the bar for what it means to be a Jeopardy phenomenon. The phrase ironclad law isn't something Jennings had used publicly before. It refers, according to him, to a set of unwritten rules that govern champions who make it past the early rounds and start to become true legends. These laws, Jennings explains, aren't about trivia knowledge alone. They're about strategy, composure, timing, and the subtle art of knowing when to wager everything and when to hold back. It's something you feel instinctively after a few games, Jennings noted. The ironclad law is about respecting the game while also daring to bend it when the moment calls for it. Scott Riccardi, who has captivated viewers with his calculated approach and unflappable demeanor. This is the perfect case study for this principle. In his first few episodes, Riccardi displayed a combination of breadth in knowledge and sharp buzzer timing, traits that are often cited as critical for Jeopardy champions. But according to Jennings, what really separates a super champ like Riccardi from a solid player is the psychological mastery of the board, the ability to read the clues, anticipate opponents, and execute precision wagers. Jennings emphasized that the ironclad law becomes most visible in high-pressure situations, particularly during daily doubles and Final Jeopardy. He recounted his own experience during his historic run in 2004, which turned him into a household name. There were moments when I knew I could either play it safe or make a daring move. The ironclad law is about making the right choice consistently, even when the pressure is at its peak, he explained. Scott is showing us that he has that instinct already. Fans watching Riccardi have noticed the same thing Jennings highlighted. During one recent episode, Riccardi found a daily double when trailing slightly behind another contestant. Most players in his position might have hesitated or wagered conservatively, fearing the risk of elimination. Riccardi, however, made a bold wager that ultimately catapulted him into a commanding lead-in execution that perfectly embodies the ironclad law in action. Social media quickly erupted with praise, drawing comparisons to past super champs and sparking debates about whether Riccardi could be the next Ken Jennings, leave a legend. Jennings himself seemed cautiously optimistic, highlighting the difficulty of maintaining a long streak. The ironclad law isn't just about winning one game or two, it's about sustaining excellence under intense scrutiny and pressure, he said. Scott has shown all the right signs, but we'll see if he can keep it going. That's what separates the greats from the remarkable. Interestingly, Jennings also touched on the mental and emotional challenges that come with being a Jeopardy super champ. While fans often focus on the glory of winning, the behind-the-scenes reality is more nuanced. You're in a high-stakes environment, every move scrutinized, every wager debated on social media. The ironclad law includes not letting external pressure affect your internal rhythm, Jennings remarked. In Riccardi's case, His calmness and methodical approach suggests he understands this law intuitively, which is why his streak resonates so strongly with viewers. Moreover, Jennings reflected on how the ironclad law is not only about individual skill but also about understanding the dynamics of the game itself. The show's categories, clue, difficulty, and even the placement of daily doubles create an ecosystem where strategy can make all the difference. Scott seems to have an almost instinctive sense of the board. That's rare. Most champions take years to develop that, but he's showing it early, Jennings noted. This insight demonstrates how the show is not simply a test of trivia knowledge, but also a game of psychological insight, timing, and risk assessment, a combination that defines the true Jeopardy! Elite. For many longtime fans, the resurgence of interest in strategic play is reminiscent of the Jennings era, when viewers were captivated not just by correct answers but by the mastery of the game itself. Riccardi's performances have sparked renewed excitement, with fans analyzing his wagers, buzz-in speed, and category selections. It's a level of engagement that Jeopardy! Thrives on, and Jennings is quick to recognize it. When the audience starts discussing wagers and timing, that's when you know a player is doing something extraordinary, he said. Scott is inspiring that level of discussion, which is exactly what makes a super champ. Interestingly, Jennings also compared Riccardi's rise to some of the legendary champions who came before him, noting similarities in game flow and decision-making. While each champion has a unique style, certain patterns like confidence in wagering and the ability to anticipate an opponent's moves remain consistent. The ironclad law is timeless. It applies to everyone who's reached that super champ stage, from Brad Rutter to myself, and now to Scott. That consistency is what makes these champions part of Jeopardy! History. He also touched on the importance of preparation and study habits. Riccardi, like past champions, reportedly spends hours daily studying not only trivia but also the mechanics of the game, including buzzer timing and risk management. It's not enough to know the answers, Jennings said. You have to understand the game, the strategy, and how to stay cool under pressure. Scott's doing all of that remarkably well, which is why his streak is catching attention. At the end of the discussion, Jennings offered both a challenge and a compliment to Riccardi. If he continues to honor the ironclad law, playing smart, daring at the right moments, and staying composed, he could be remembered as one of the greats. He said, Jeopardy! Isn't just about knowledge, it's about wisdom in action, and that's what Scott is showing us. For viewers and fans, this commentary has added another layer of excitement to the show. Riccardi's streak is no longer just about accumulating wins. It's about observing a masterclass in strategy, timing, and decision-making in real time. Jennings' invocation of the ironclad law has elevated the discussion, reminding everyone that Jeopardy! Champions are defined not only by what they know, but by how they play the game under the spotlight of history. As Jeopardy! Continues to air, all eyes will remain on Scott Riccardi, with fans eager to see how long he can sustain his streak and whether he can embody the principles of the ironclad law fully. With Ken Jennings' endorsement and analysis, the conversation has shifted from simple fandom to a deeper appreciation of what it takes to be a Jeopardy! Super champ, a combination of intelligence, intuition, nerve, and strategic foresight that only a select few have mastered. In a world where trivia shows are often dismissed as mere entertainment, Jennings' insights remind us that Jeopardy! Is a battlefield of intellect and strategy. Scott Riccardi's rise, guided by the invisible yet unbreakable ironclad law, promises to be one of the most thrilling chapters in the show's storied history. On Jennings, ever the scholar of the game, will be watching closely.